On the final word there. Thank you for talking to our viewers. Appreciate it. And the House is in live coverage right now of the debate over this payroll tax cut holiday.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., December 20th, 2011. I hereby appoint the Honorable Steve Womack to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
The prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. Dear God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. Bless the members of the People's House as they depart the nation's capital to return to their homes. May they find rest and renewal during their time with family and friends. Bless our nation as the year comes to a close. Help us to look to the future with hope and committed to a renewed effort to work together as citizens of a united America. Help us all to be truly grateful for the blessings of this past year. May this holy season of hope for so many people prove to be a healing balm for our nation. Bless also, as this session comes to a close, the absent member of this assembly, Gabby Giffords. Speed her recovery. May she be always reminded of our prayers and best wishes for her. Thank you for the remarkable progress she has already made. And as always, we pray that all that is done this day be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
Pursuant to Section 3A of House Resolution 493, the Journal of the Last Day's Proceedings is approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Carter.
Place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain up to 5 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection. Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, just about sunrise in the desert of the sun and the valley of the gun, the last American troops left Iraq. It was this past Sunday, December 16th, 2011. It has been 8 years, 7 months, and 24 days since the war began. The Americans are coming home by Christmas. Mission accomplished. 4,474 Americans gave their lives and thousands of others were wounded. The last American casualty was Army Specialist David Emanuel Hickman from North Carolina, killed on November the 14th. These Americans died in a land they had never been for a people they had never known. The Americans have liberated Iraq from a dictatorship. To apply Ben Franklin's statement on the founding of America, we have given the Iraqis a free country. Let's see if they can keep it or not. The choice and responsibility for Iraq is now with Iraq. But we here in America shall remember those who served and returned, those who served and did not return, and those who served and returned with the wounds of war. As one wounded trooper said yesterday, the worst casualty of war is to be forgotten, and that's just the way it is.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Speaker, I rise to request 1 minute to 5 and extend my remarks.
Without objection, gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate the St. Xavier University Cougars on winning the NAIA National Football Championship on Saturday. It is another thrilling game and a fitting way for St. Xavier to bring home the first national championship in any sport to the school. From the freshmen to the seniors, from the top-ranked offense to the defense and the special teams, everyone played a part in the victory in the Cougars' amazing season. This is the first time since 1913 that a college football team from Chicago has won a national championship, and the Cougars did it with a lot of homegrown talent. Chicago, Lamont, Joliet, Tinley Park, Oak Lawn, Palos Heights, Park Ridge, Rockford, Frankfort. These and many other towns are well represented on this historic team. The players, Coach Mike Feminis and his staff, St. Xavier, the City of Chicago, the state of Illinois should all be proud. Congratulations to the Cougars, the NAIA National Football Champions.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, Peter Isberg, President of the National Payroll Reporting Consortium, Inc., expressed concern over the Senate proposed payroll tax plan, which offers only a 2-month extension instead of the year-long extension passed last week by the House. In a letter written to several members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, Isberg stated that, quote, insufficient lead time could create substantial problems, confusion, and cost, affecting a significant percentage of U.S. employers and employees, end of quote. House Republicans are willing to work for a 1-year-long extension now instead of passing a 2-month fix that will confuse American taxpayers, medical providers, and small business owners. It is necessary for both houses of Congress to work together to extend the payroll tax cut for a full year. At a time of continued record unemployment, we should be working to help small businesses create jobs. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism. We are grateful for our service members, military families, and veterans who were successful in Iraq.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
To address this House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Student loan debt is too high, and I'm asking this Congress, I'm demanding that this Congress cut it down. Student loan debt will soon approach $1 trillion. And as our graduates are struggling to repay off this debt is robbing them of their future, and it's costing this country jobs. That's why I will soon introduce this bill to responsibly reduce student loan debt, to make repayment simpler and fairer, and to give our graduates a chance that they deserve, a chance to enjoy the American dream. I yield back my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend.
Without objection, the gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, last week I dropped a resolution commending Robert Griffin III for winning the 2011 Heisman Trophy. Robert Griffin, a student of Baylor University, is one of the outstanding Americans in this country. An amazing young man who graduated from high school at Copperas Cove, Texas, in my district. He graduated in 2008, went off to Baylor University to play football and go to school. He graduated from Baylor University in 2010. I think that alone is pretty fantastic. He went on to be the quarterback of the Baylor football team, leading them to the best season that they've had in generations. They are ranked number 12 in the Bowl Championship Series. This is a young man whose mother and father are sergeants in the Army. He was born overseas while they were serving. He now is the Heisman Trophy winner, has been named the outstanding player in the country, and he is not only outstanding as a student, but he's outstanding as a player and as a human being. And he chose Baylor University because he wanted to go to a good Christian school. This young man won the Davy O'Brien Award. He is the kind of role model that we want our children to aspire to be. He's hardworking with a good work ethic. He believes in his fellow players. He cares, he leads, and he wins. This young man should be commended. Within 2 years from now, he will have a master's degree and a law degree in addition to his bachelor's degree, and he still has 1 more year of eligibility. I would say this is the kind of kid we all wish our kid could grow up to be. I want to commend his parents, the people of Copperas Cove and the state of Texas for producing this fine young football player. We call him RG3. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Address the House for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is outrageous that the House Republicans will not allow the Senate bill to come up today that would extend the payroll tax cut, that would also provide unemployment benefits for so many million Americans that are out of work, and also allow seniors to have their Medicaid reimbursement paid to their doctors so the doctors will accept Medicare. I cannot believe that at the end of the year now, is this the Christmas present? Is this New Year's gift that we're going to give to the American people? That their taxes are going to be raised? That they're not going to be able to have unemployment insurance if they're unemployed? And what does this mean for the economy, Mr. Speaker? Do the House Republicans want to send a message to the President right now when the economy is actually starting to improve slightly? This could easily send us back and make the economy go back into a tailspin. Do they dislike the President so much that they would risk the economy for that? I cannot believe that we're not going to have an opportunity today to vote on the Senate bill and to make sure that these things are extended, particularly the payroll tax cut, because that is very important for the economy. It's very important for small businesses. It is an outrage, Mr. Speaker.
What purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
The House for 1 minute, revise and extend my
Without objection, the gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
It's amazing, Mr. Speaker, those that now claim that we're opposed to increasing the sales tax holiday for 1 year actually voted against it just a few weeks ago. But we're here today to make sure that taxes on 160 million Americans don't go up on January 1st. We're here to stop politics as usual in Washington. President Obama called for a 1-year extension of the payroll tax holiday, and we're here to do exactly that. Job creators need economic certainty to create jobs, and to do that, we must extend the payroll tax holiday for 1 year. Kicking the can down the road only introduces more uncertainty into our economy. Payroll experts say that this is going to hurt small businesses. Enough of these Washington gimmicks. The House already voted to extend the payroll tax for a full year, the holiday for a full year for all hardworking Americans. But the Senate Democrats opposed our bipartisan bill. Senate Democrats have a clear choice to make. Continue the game of Washington politics as usual, or join with House Republicans to stop a tax increase on 160 million Americans. I urge them to make the right choice.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning in support of a long-term extension for an important middle-class tax cut for American families that are struggling in these difficult economic times to make ends meet. We've been elected by the people to do their work and provide the conditions for the private sector to get this economy back on track and put Americans back to work. This work includes stable, predictable policy from Washington, and that includes tax policy. A 2-month extension does not provide any certainty to families or to small business job creators. The House and President Obama agree that a 12-month extension of the payroll tax cut must be enacted. Therefore, I ask that Leader Reid and the Senate come back to town and join us in passing a long-term extension of the payroll tax cut. Anything less is unacceptable. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, it's so unfortunate that today we find ourselves continuing to argue over whether or not an extension of the middle-class tax cut should take place now, as opposed to continuing to try to load the bill up with poison pills, cutting off people's unemployment insurance, and getting into an argument with the Senate. The proposal that after a year of deliberations that the Republicans came up with was rejected in the Senate on a bipartisan basis. Another bill was passed overwhelmingly to give us a 2-month extension so that we can continue to try to work out a long-term solution to a middle-class tax cut without accepting poison pills. But now what we see is the Republicans choose to turn down that compromise that brought the Senate together, that can bring this House together, to refuse to let us have a vote on that measure because they know there will be bipartisan support for that measure in this House. We can come together and in this holiday season give American middle-class families the security that they will have a continuation of the tax cut on January 1st. But that's not what the Republicans are going to do. They're going to throw families and our economy into chaos for the sake of trying to make political points.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 502 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 102, House Resolution 502. Resolved, that upon adoption of this resolution it shall be in order, without intervention of any point of order or question of consideration, to take from the Speaker's table the bill, H.R. 3630, to provide incentives for the creation of jobs and for other purposes, with the Senate amendments thereto, and to consider in the House a motion offered by the Chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, or his designee, that the House disagree to the Senate amendments and request a conference with the Senate thereon. The Senate amendments and the motion shall be considered as read. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the motion to its adoption without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Ways and Means. Section 2. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order without intervention of any point of order or question of consideration to consider in the House the resolution, House Resolution 501, expressing the sense of the House of Representatives regarding any final measure to extend the payroll tax holiday, extend federally funded unemployment insurance benefits, and prevent decreases in reimbursement for physicians who provide care to Medicare beneficiaries. The resolution shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the resolution are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the resolution and preamble to adoption without intervening motion or demand for division of the question, except 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Ways and Means. Section 3. During consideration of a motion to instruct conferees pending their appointment to a conference on H.R. 3630, the previous question shall be considered as ordered to its adoption without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate under Clause 7B of Rule 22. Such motion shall be considered as read and shall not be subject to any question of consideration. Section 4. During consideration of a motion specified in the first section of this resolution or Section 3 of this resolution, the Chair may A, notwithstanding the operation of the previous question, postpone further consideration of the motion to such time as may be designated by the Speaker as though under Clause 1C of Rule 19, and B, postpone the question of adoption of the motion as though under Clause 8 of Rule 20. Section 5. The requirement of Clause 6A of Rule 13 for a 2/3 vote to consider a report from the Committee on Rules on the same day it is presented to the House is waived with respect to any resolution reported through the legislative day of January 17, 2012. Section 6. It shall be in order at any time through the calendar day of January 15, 2012 for the Speaker to entertain motions that the House suspend the rules as though under Clause 1C of Rule 15.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Slaughter, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
House Resolution 502 provides for a motion to go to conference on H.R. 3630 and for a closed rule on H.Res. 501. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of this rule and the underlying bills. To be honest, Mr. Speaker, being here today is almost ridiculous, because last week the House passed a very good bill. And the 3 major components of it are very simple. Payroll tax extension, a holiday. Not a 60-day holiday, but a 1-year payroll tax extension that is paid for. Unemployment insurance. We address unemployment insurance in a very compassionate way, working as the President has suggested. We need to cut it by 20 weeks over time. So our House, in a bipartisan fashion, is working to take it from 99 weeks to 59 weeks, holding in truth the spirit of our president. And finally, the doc fix. If we're going to keep Medicare and the recipients of Medicare whole, we have to address the reimbursement rates of the doctors. This doc fix stops at almost 30% cut in the reimbursement rates. But beyond that, we decided that it is time to create American jobs. So the Keystone Pipeline that creates more than 20,000 jobs is in this bill. But not only do we want to create jobs, we want to save jobs. And so you think of the Boiler Mac that saves more jobs than the pipeline creates. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, our friends on the left want to continue to hold the middle class hostage because they have a plan on to continue to raise taxes as they have over the last year. As a matter of fact, in 2010, in one bill only, Mr. Speaker, one bill only, they raised taxes on the middle class, and this year, because we're moving into an election year, they decided it's time to remember the American middle class. But last year, they were taxing that middle class and taxing that middle class and taxing that middle class. Let me give you a few examples. A new $123 billion of taxes on the middle class in investment income. A hike in Medicare payroll tax of $86 billion passed through to the middle class. I don't know why this year all of a sudden they want to talk about tax breaks for the middle class and only give them 60 days, Mr. Speaker. I believe that the middle class deserves certainty, and our bill gives them certainty. We say for 1 year we need to extend to the middle class, people who are struggling every day to make their ends meet. Our friends on the left, they're getting ready for campaign season. And so what they're really concerned about is themselves. But what we said that when you take into consideration that a person who needs a medical device must now pay a pass-through tax up towards $20 billion, that's not compassionate. That's not fair, Mr. Speaker. When you think about tanning services, a $2.7 billion pass-through tax to the middle class on tanning services. Now, I'm not quite sure what tanning services has to do with health care. But we find ourselves in the midst, sir, of another backdoor tax increase on the middle class. Or, if we need drugs of the future, let's go ahead and tax the innovating companies $22 billion and pass it to the middle class. Or if you don't like those taxes, we've got another one on health insurers. Let's take $60 billion out of the pockets of the middle class by making the insurers pay more, which they know they will pass it through to the middle class. But since that may not be enough, they decided that they would actually tax the health plans of the middle class, $32 billion on the plans of the middle class. I just don't understand it, Mr. Speaker. We must not only extend this tax cut for the middle class, we must also pay for it. As I was talking to one of my constituents, a 57-year-old who makes $650 every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks she brings home $650, and she needs her $600 tax cut. But she's very close to Social Security, so she says to me, Tim, please, as you provide an extension of the tax cut, please don't raid the Social Security fund. So we, on the right, have decided in a bipartisan way to work with the president. Our offsets include 90% offsets that the president himself have agreed to. In a bipartisan way, we address the payroll tax extension. We keep Social Security as solvent as it can be today, and we continue to make sure that senior citizens have doctors who will see them because we fixed the problem of reimbursement rates, and unemployment is now a greater incentive for work than it has been in more than 2 years or so, because we're taking 99 weeks and we're working in a bipartisan fashion. with the President and taking it down to 59 weeks for some states. Once again, Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this rule, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentlelady from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning. And I want to thank my friend, Mr. Scott from South Carolina, for yielding me the customary 30 minutes and yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. A lot of verbiage is going on here this morning, but, Mr. and Ms. America, let me tell you what we're doing here. Nothing. We were promised that we could have a vote to concur in what the Senate did, 89 to 10, give it to the President and make sure that the payroll tax continues. But that's not what we're doing here today. What they changed that to is to reject what the Senate did and ask for a conference, which the other side, the leader of the Senate, said he's not going to do. We could have done all this last week, but instead 435 of us have been flown back here this week to do absolutely nothing. At the end of the day here, we will not have accomplished a thing. There will be no payroll tax. There will be no unemployment insurance. There will be no doc fix. It just simply says we reject what they did, 89 to 10, which is a miracle in itself. But we're not going to do anything here. We're just going to kick it back over to the other side of that. Now, in addition to this, the President has not signed the omnibus bill. I think he was going to wait for this one, which means that come Friday, the government could shut down. We have, once again, this brinksmanship of hanging by our thumbs. So if I can make any point today for America, don't pay any attention to that man behind the curtain here. We are not doing anything. We could have, but we are not. And after that great expense of shuttling us all back and forth last weekend, we come here today, and we really had a rare opportunity to truly come together and provide the vital assistance to Americans in need. The Senate certainly answered the call in a bipartisan bill, which was really quite wonderful. Made us all feel really good about the Congress. May have even made us go up from 9 to 10 points, for all I know. But they passed the bill with the support of 89 senators, then 80% of the Republican senators, and I'm very proud of them. Not only did they vote for that, but they are signaling their great displeasure that the House can't do the same. And until Saturday night, this bill had the blessings of the Speaker of this House. After a year of bitter battles in Washington, we stood on the brink of a bipartisan agreement to lower taxes and provide much-needed assistance to those who are struggling to get through the holiday season through no fault of their own, having lost their employment. That is until a small army of ideologues said no and demanded that the truly bipartisan bill be tossed out into the cold. What a shame. So we meet today at the height of the Christmas season, as the time-worn tales of Tiny Tim and Mr. Scrooge are playing out in theaters across the country and here in the House. Will we come together to provide a gift for the American people, or will a small group of ideologues let taxes rise and the unemployed go without housing and food as we ring in the new year? It is my belief, and certainly borne out, I think, by not a lot of the media this morning, that one of the reasons that the vote today is to reject the Senate bill was if we had had a vote to concur in it instead and say that we agreed with what the Senate had done, that it would have passed. Now, I spoke about this game of brinksmanship last week, and certainly you know we've gone the whole year hoping that there would be no payroll tax on the other side. They didn't believe in that, and certainly did not believe in the extension of unemployment. Now, suddenly today, we can't just have 2 months. We've got to have a year. Well, the reason they couldn't get a year in the Senate was the difference of opinion in how to pay for it. It was decided that 2 months, we keep it. We will not lose it after 2 months. During those 2 months, the House and Senate, we would hope, would be working out ways that we continue it for a year. There's not going to be that great hardship of bookkeeping that everybody's talking about. We were going to take our time to fix it during those 2 months. The 2 months was basically an emergency measure which is being turned down by the House of Representatives. We'd love to live in a world where every single principle we believed in could be made true, where those who disagreed with us would bend to our wishes and support our views. But quite simply, we don't live in that world. After the majority spent the entire year ignoring the need for an extended tax break, and renewed insurance for the unemployment. I've heard frequent refrain in the last 24 hours. Policies we are considering today should not be implemented for 2 months, but for a year. That is pretty recent. The majority should be heartened to know that hardly a soul in the body disagrees with them. We all wanted a year, as did the President of the United States. As I'd said before, we know that we will get that year, and we will have the 2 months to work on doing that extension. But however, after weeks of negotiation, 435 legislators can't agree on an equally important point, how to pay for the tax cuts for a year. Democrats have said that millionaires and those who have benefited the most from the past decade should pay for this tax break. Majority said that seniors receiving Medicare should pay instead, and that indeed was in the bill passed here last week. This simple but profound disagreement is part of what has led us here today. The other part of the equation is the majority needed to design a vote that no matter the vote totals, they would never lose. Isn't that clever? If we had another month to work on resolving our disagreement, we could continue to debate without pause. However, the clock is about to hit midnight, and the taxes of millions of Americans and the unemployed insurance of millions more are about to be harmed because we won't strike a deal. By now, it should be obvious why we must pass this Senate agreement. It's time that all of us accept the world as it is. It's time that we came to a compromise to benefit millions of Americans in this time of holiday cheer for some. There will be many more debates in the months to come about how to help the American people. But now we must seize our opportunity and provide for the millions of Americans who sent us here to make sure the season can be a little bit better than the last. So I'm going to urge my colleagues to defeat the previous question when we get to that point. But I want to reiterate again, nothing is happening here today. When we leave here, the tax cut will not be extended. Unemployment will not be extended. We will simply go back home to await the consequences of what we're doing here today. I deeply regret that because I would have liked nothing better than the partisanship that the Senate showed in this time of need to have been on display here as well in the House of Representatives. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady's time is reserved. Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not quite sure if I heard Ms. Slaughter correctly, but she seemed to allude or suggest that the President might not pass the omnibus bill because of this bill, which sounds like a reaffirmation of the fact that we're playing politics on the left while we on the right consistently look for ways to help the middle class. And I would also say that when Republican Senator Jim DeMint and President Obama and Speaker Boehner and Democrat Senator Manchin are on the same page on a one-year extension, we ought to sound like a sounding board for those four who are typically in opposite corners. Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from the great state of Georgia, Dr. Rob Woodall.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague from South Carolina for yielding. He knows just how excited I am to be down here today. He knows how excited I am because unlike what my colleague from New York suggests about accepting how the world is, today's a day where we decided, you know what, we can do better. We can do better. The million folks that I represent back home in Georgia don't want to accept the way this body operates today. They want us to do better. You know, I know when this body passed this one-year extension last December that they knew we were going to be back here today. For a year, we've known we were going to be back here today to suggest that if only you give us another 60 days, we'll do better. That's the way this House has worked in years past. But this year, this body has said, if these issues are so important to the American family, and they are, if these issues are so critical to the economy, and they are, why do we need another 60 days? Why not do it today? We know that it has to happen. We know that it's coming. Why can't we get together and do it today? Now, I'll tell you, I've studied majority politics in this body, and traditionally speaking, the majority, which the Republicans are, would just bring a bill to the floor and jam it through, my way or the highway. You've seen it. You've seen it when Republicans have done it, and you've seen it when Democrats have done it, and it could have happened that way again today. But what did the Rules Committee do? Rules Committee didn't say my way or the highway. The Rules Committee said, we've got a position here in the House. They have a position there in the Senate. Let's do what we've been doing for hundreds of years and come together in a conference to work out our differences. There are those in this body who would rather work out our differences on the front page of the newspaper. There are those in this body who would rather work out our differences on Sunday morning talk show programs. But I don't think that's the best way to get the people's business done, and neither do the million folks back home that I represent. It's okay that we disagree about what this policy ought to look like. It is not okay if we let the disagreement put the economy in peril and put the budgets of hardworking American taxpayers at home in peril. We can do better. And we are doing better. We are doing better. You know, traditional process would have been to go ahead and push this bill through late last night. We called everybody back. Could have just gone ahead and passed it in the dark of night. And folks said, you know what? That's not the right way to operate this body. We can do better. If we're proud of what we're doing, let's put it off till tomorrow morning. Let's do it in the light of day, and let's let everybody have their say. That's what we're doing. That's why we're here today. I say to my friend from South Carolina, I'm proud that we serve on that Rules Committee together. I'm proud of our leadership for giving us this opportunity to be open, and I am proud that it is not a small band of rebels in a Republican conference, as my friend from New York would suggest, that are hijacking this process. It is a proud band of 240 Republicans who say regular order has merit. Let's do it in the way that we have done it for hundreds of years, House bill, Senate bill. Let's come together, Mr. Speaker, and work out those differences.
Gentleman's
I
time
thank
has
my friend.
expired. Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts and a member of the Committee on Rules, Mr. McGovern.
Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, last night the Rules Committee, at the direction of the Republican leadership, voted out a martial law rule that will deny the House of Representatives an up or down vote on the bipartisan Senate compromise. No vote. We're only days away from seeing 160 million hardworking, middle-income Americans see their taxes increase, and there's no vote. We're on the verge of allowing 2 million jobless people to lose their unemployment benefits and 48 million seniors to lose their health care, and the Republicans tell us there can be no vote. Are you kidding me? My Republican friends last night defended their delaying tactics by saying all they wanted was to protect regular order when it comes to legislation. Since when? Regular order, please. The Rules Committee is becoming a place where democracy and fairness go to die. This process is shameful. We have a habit in this House where we like to point fingers and blame at the Senate for its dysfunction. But we can't do that today because the Senate actually functioned and gave us a bipartisan compromise. It's not perfect, and we all want a one-year extension of the payroll tax cut. But as we struggle to find acceptable pay-fors, which up to this point we have not been able to do, the U.S. Senate has provided us with a bridge to get there. This compromise includes a short-term extension of the payroll tax cut, unemployment insurance, and the dock fix. The package also includes a requirement that President Obama make a decision on the Keystone XL pipeline, which many of us find hard to swallow. But Democrats get something they want, and Republicans get something they want. But that's not good enough for House Republicans. At a time when the American people want Democrats and Republicans to work together, the Senate actually did. That politicians can come to agreement on important matters, I believe, is a good thing. But what's a bad thing is what we're doing here in the House today, trying to scuttle this deal by denying us a vote. In today's Washington Post, a Republican member is quoted as saying, and I quote, "It's high-stakes poker," end quote. Well, Mr. Speaker, this is not a card game. In fact, this is not a game of any kind. Let me inform my Republican colleagues that this is real life with real people and real consequences. I would say to the Republican leaders of this House, show us that you can govern. This is time for an adult moment. It's time to tell your Tea Party wing that the American people come first. It's time to put country ahead of political party. We're less than 12 days away from a tax increase on middle-class Americans, and instead of doing what's right for 160 million Americans, the Republican leadership is playing politics, denying us a vote and ensuring that today, when all is said and done, we will accomplish absolutely nothing for the American people. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, vote down this rule. Don't leave town until we have a chance to vote on the Senate compromise so that we can ensure that millions of our fellow citizens don't see their taxes going up during these difficult economic times. Give us a vote. Why won't you give us a vote? We demand a vote. Let us have a vote so we can do what's right for the American people. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from South Carolina.
I want to thank them for clapping for us. Mr. Chairman, I would just simply say that if you're looking for a bipartisan approach to legislation, if you're looking for someone who wants to work with the White House, 90% of our offsets have been agreed to by the President. And I will simply say that when the President is right, which I don't agree with him very often, he's right. The President said that Congress should not go home for vacation until it finds a way to avoid hitting 160 million Americans with a tax hike on January the 1st. It would be inexcusable for Congress not to extend this tax holiday for an entire year. I think a bipartisan approach has been taken. I am assured by that fact because the President and I are on the same page, and it doesn't happen but once every year, and it must be Christmas. I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Chairman Jeb Hensarling.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The American people know why we are here today. We are here today because the President's economic policies have failed. Since the President was elected, unemployment has been at, near, or above 9%. 1 on 7 on food stamps. Small business startups about at a 17-year low. That's the Obama economy. And because of that, Mr. Speaker, almost every single member of the House and Senate agree that we should extend the payroll tax holiday for another year. And so what is so confusing to many of us is that as my friends on the other side of the aisle say, yes, we need to do this for a year, like the President said, like the American people expect, and yet they all want to vote against it. So the disagreement we have here, Mr. Speaker, is do you want to punt the ball down the field? Do you want to do this for 60 days and do it again 60 days for another 60 days? Or do you want to solve the problem? That's the first debate. And it really, Mr. Speaker, begs the question, why? Why do we have so many people saying they want to do this for a year, and yet they're only willing to vote for 60 days? Are people more interested in making a law that will benefit the American people? Are they more interested in making a campaign issue that may benefit their own re-election campaigns? That's the question. The second point of debate is the American people, many of whom are suffering because of this economy, they're willing to work over the holidays. Are we willing to work over the holidays? The House is willing to work. The question is, where's the Senate? Okay? Since the dawn of the Republic, we have this thing called a conference committee. You know, if you took Civics 101, you remember it. The House passes a bill, the Senate passes a bill, they come together in a conference committee, they work out their differences. We stand ready to work over the holidays. And here's the third point. Do you want to pass a bill for messaging purposes, or do you want to pass a bill that works? ABC reported last night, holiday passed by Senate, pushed by President, cannot be implemented properly, experts say. The National Payroll Reporting Consortium, this is the group that handles all the payroll issues for practically a third of all of the private sector workers in the country. And they said, quote, it could create substantial problems, confusion, and cost affecting a significant percentage of U.S. employers and employees. And in fact, the Association Builders and Contractors have said this sort of temporary fix underscores Congress's uneven ad hoc approach toward the economy and causes more harm than good for America's job creators. And so again, Mr. Speaker, the gentleman yield an additional 30 seconds.
Yield an additional 30 seconds.
Gentleman is recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
So, Mr. Speaker, it really comes down to this. If you say you want to do this for a year, put your vote where your rhetoric is. If you're not willing to work over the holidays, admit to the American people you're not willing to work over the holidays. And do you want to, if you want to support a bill that actually works, talk to the job creators in America. That's the problem in Washington. People get isolated. Talk to the people who are absolutely responsible for this, and they will tell you this 60-day ad hoc approach doesn't work. That's why we need a rule to go to conference and put forth something the American people want and need.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 2.5 minutes to the gentleman from Colorado, member of the Rules Committee, Mr. Polis.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 2.5 minutes.
I thank the gentlelady from New York for the time. These last 2 weeks have really shown us the tax and spend Republican Party up close. First, we passed a defense authorization with over $800 million in earmarks, according to a study by Claire McCaskill. Then we passed a huge omnibus spending bill and spent over $900 billion, actually increasing defense spending, all deficit spending. Spending. But oh, now it gets worse. Republicans are poised today to vote to raise taxes by tens of billions of dollars. Worse yet, they aren't even allowing a vote to keep taxes where they are. Whether this bill passes or not, make no mistakes, it's purely symbolic, as it advances no bill to President Obama to keep taxes where they are. And so they will go up on January 1st by $1,000 for the average American family, costing American taxpayers tens of billions of dollars without even helping reduce the deficit, since this Republican tax increase is money the Republicans already spent last week in the omnibus $900 billion spending spree. Spending, taxes. The deficit goes up. You can't tax your way out of this budget problem this country's in, but the Republicans have been trying to do just that these last few weeks. To solve our budget problem, we need to cut spending. Now, there's some balanced plans out there, and most experts agree that as part of a balanced plan with spending cuts, some revenues are necessary. In fact, President Obama put together the Simpson-Bowles bipartisan plan. Republican leadership didn't allow a vote. The Gang of Six in the Senate put together a bipartisan proposal to cut spending, balance the budget. Republican leadership didn't allow a vote. The Super Committee was supposed to come out with a budget fix that included everything we're talking about here today, the SGR fix, the payroll tax, unemployment insurance, but it failed. The Republicans walked away. Now, President Obama and a bipartisan group of 90% of the Senate proposed not increasing taxes, and yet the Republicans are refusing to bring it to the floor. So instead of a balanced plan with spending cuts, here we are in the heels of a huge Republican omnibus spending bill with record deficit spending and tax increases, raising taxes on the middle class. The tax and spend Republican Party is here today and here to stay. Not only that, but while the people of the country are waking up, Congress is going to sleep. With 10 days left and so much work to do, Republicans took the evening off, rather than work through the night to try to get something as quick as possible so the Senate might be able to reconvene. They gave themselves the night off. Congress didn't even debate this topic or have a single vote yesterday night with 10 days to go. I urge a no vote on the rule, a no vote on the bill, and urge the Speaker and the tax and spend Republican leadership to let us vote now on preventing a huge tax increase on January 1st. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I enjoy listening to my friends on the left talk about how they need to get on our side and stop the tax increases. But the funny problem is, and it's a funny problem, that the American people may like what they say, but they don't like what they do. I would only suggest and ask people to check the voting record on the tax increases. And I would also say that our bill, the omnibus bill, reduces tax, or our payroll tax extension bill, reduces the deficit, the debt, by $953 million. $953 million reduction. Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Sheriff Nugent.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 3 minutes.
I'd like to thank the gentleman from South Carolina for giving me this time. Mr. Speaker, just think about this. 3 days ago, Saturday, President Obama said in his quote, "It would be inexcusable for Congress not to further extend this middle-class tax cut for the rest of the year." Same day, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said House Democrats will return to Washington to take up this legislation without delay, and will keep the fight to extend the provisions for a full year. And on Saturday, Minority Whip Hoyer said he was disappointed that the Senate would not agree to a longer-term extension. Mr. Speaker, what the Senate has done is, and we've heard this term so many times before, is it's about business as usual. Let's not make a decision that we can put off for another 2 months. Mr. Speaker, this House in a bipartisan way, last week came up with a one-year extension, a two-year doc fix extension that will help those individuals provide medical services to our seniors, that gives them a sustainable way to look forward on our docs and a doc fix for 2 years, not 2 months. When you hear from other individuals in the real world, those that have to implement a policy that was designed by those in the Senate for 2 months. Think about it. When you have to report that tax to the federal government, it's quarterly, not 2 months. How are they supposed to do that? How do you reconcile that difference? Once again, the Senate refused to take action that the House did. Everybody talks about what the Senate's done. The House passed a bipartisan bill and moved it forward in regards to a one-year extension on unemployment benefits, one-year extension in regards to the payroll tax, and a two-year doc fix. That's what the House did. And now all we're asking is that we go to regular order, just like they've done for hundreds of years when the two bodies can't agree. When the two bodies can't agree, they go to conference, where there's conferees from both sides sit down and hash it out and come up with a resolution to bring back to both bodies. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what our founding fathers envisioned. Not backroom deals, not things cut in the dead of night. It's not about us voting, and thank God that our Speaker saw the light in regards to not voting in the dead of night. He believes in regular order. He believes that we should move forward as a body and go to conference with our Senate brothers and sisters to decide the course that we need to make. I can't believe that there aren't folks in the Senate that couldn't get this done with our members in this House and get it done in 2 weeks. Mr. Speaker, I support the rule, and I wholeheartedly support the underlying legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California, distinguished ranking member of the Committee on Education and the Workforce, Mr. Miller.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, with the procedure that the Republicans are using today, we miss an opportunity for the House and the Senate and Republicans and Democrats to come together around an extension of the middle-class tax cut for the next 2 months. It's unfortunate that it's for 2 months, but the Republicans in this House sent to the Senate a very extreme bill for 1 year by slashing people's unemployment benefits, ruining those families' ability to survive this period of economic downturn, and the Senate rejected that on a bipartisan basis. The Senate was then encouraged by the Speaker of the House to negotiate a deal. The Senate Leader Harry Reid and McConnell negotiated a deal, and the Speaker of the House said he thought it was a good deal. In fact, he used the word victory. Then when the suggestion was, why didn't we vote last week, it was, well, maybe when it came back from the Senate, we could do it on some sort of unanimous consent procedure. Then there were rumbles in the House that there was going to be Republicans in the Republican caucus that wanted to join the 39 Republicans in the Senate that voted for this procedure, and all of a sudden what we see is the emergence of the Tea Party Republicans slapping down that idea, slapping down the idea that there would be independent judgments made in the Republican caucus, and they pulled it to a grinding halt. We will not be allowed to vote on that bipartisan agreement. We will not be allowed to vote on an agreement that brought the Republicans and the Democrats together in the Senate. We will not be able to vote on a bipartisan agreement that has the opportunity to bring Democrats and Republicans together in the House. That's because the Tea Party insists upon this radical agenda where they're going to throw millions of people off of unemployment insurance who have lost their job through no fault of their own, and that's how they'll pay for the middle-class tax cut, by injuring middle-class families who have been thrown into economic chaos because of the economic downturn caused by their friends on Wall Street and the scandals that they perpetrated on the American people. Let's bring people together, let's pass the Senate bill, and let's get on with taking care of the problems of this nation.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from South Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute To the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Meehan.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this motion this morning, but for a very important reason. The politics here is thicker than the Maine molasses. But if you take time and you go back and you talk to the real job creators in your district, you'll see the common sense approach that's being detailed right here to look for a solution. The House has already voted. We have supported the idea of passing the payroll tax. We've passed that bill. We've supported the reimbursement for the doctors so we can continue to create certainty in the relationships between doctors and their patients. We've passed that bill. Now we've got to come back and work out the differences. But when the difference becomes a 2-month extension, it defies common sense. I sat this morning and spoke with one of the individuals who is a tax accountant in my district. The quarterly tax return is the way so many small businesses do their work. The quarterly tax return, a 3-month situation. This bill will require us to go and just change these forms all over the country. Let me just close by my comments by the words from the NFIB. Employers don't have correct withholding calculations. Will have to figure out to collect more employees and amend their employment tax returns later next year, which may increase their chances for an audit. This is the kind of insanity that we're looking at small businesses being audited because Congress can't do their work. Mr. Speaker,
time has expired.
I yield.
Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to include in the record the comments from senators, Republican senators begging the House to take their bill, and yield myself 1 minute.
That objection, so ordered. Gentlelady
I
is
want
recognized.
to put into the record the key dates in the Boehner payroll tax cut debacle. On Wednesday last, Speaker Boehner sat at a meeting in Senator McConnell's office with Reid and McConnell. Speaker Boehner said the two Senate leaders should negotiate a deal and that Senator McConnell has his proxy. Thursday, Speaker Boehner made public comments promising to live by whatever agreement the Senate reached. He said, quote, "If the Senate acts, I'm committed to bringing the House back. We can do it within 24 hours to deal with whatever the Senate does." On Friday, Speaker Boehner reacted to reports that we may have to settle on a 2-month extension by saying if the Senate passed that, he would take it, add the Keystone Pipeline provision to it, and send it back to the Senate. So we added the pipeline into the deal of the Senate because that's what Speaker Boehner said he needed to get the measure through the House. Friday night, after Senator McConnell presents the payroll tax deal to his caucus, he is captured in this video leaving the caucus high-fiving Senator Barrasso. And later, Senator McConnell tells reporters, "I obviously keep the Speaker informed as to what I'm doing." Let me yield myself another 30 seconds.
Gentlelady is recognized for 30 seconds.
Saturday, McConnell calls payroll tax cut compromise a bill designed to pass. McConnell says, "I thank my friend, the Majority Leader, for the opportunity to work together with him on something that could actually pass the Senate and be signed by the President." Saturday, Speaker Boehner called the deal a good deal and a victory, and according to reports, urged his caucus to declare victory and pass it on a conference call. Saturday afternoon, Senator McConnell gave his consent to allow the Senate to adjourn for a year. On Sunday, once the Tea Party Republicans in the caucus rebelled, Speaker Boehner reversed course and is now disowning the deal he supported 24 hours earlier. I yield 2 minutes, gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 2 minutes.
Yes.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, in just over 2 weeks, Americans who are fortunate enough to have work will get their first paycheck of 2012, and the paycheck will be lower because there's a tax increase. The question before the country today is, should we stop that? Yes or no? In 11 or 12 days, a senior will go to see her doctor. And there's a very high risk that the doctor will not see that Medicare patient because the doctor's seen a 27% cut in what the doctor has been paid. The question before the country is, should we stop that? Yes or no? In just over 11 days, over 2 million Americans will see their unemployment benefits expire, and they will have virtually no income to pay any of their bills. The answer is, should we stop that? Yes or no? Now, the other body has taken up a bill that gives us the answer. The taxes would not last.
the senior would be able to see their doctor and the unemployment benefits would not expire. 89 members of the Senate voted for this. The President of the United States said he'd sign this. Virtually every member of the Democratic side of the House is prepared to vote for this. But this is not on the House floor today. Now, it's just fine for a member to say, yes, I support this compromise, or no, I don't support this compromise. But it is an abrogation of the basic duty of this House not to take a vote on it. The choices ought to be, yes, we support the bill, no, we don't support the bill. It shouldn't be, we don't want to take a vote on the bill, we want to duck the question. We are compensated to cast votes and explain our votes to the American people. By refusing to let this bill come to the floor today, the majority is abrogating its responsibility to the country. We should oppose this rule.